Banks in the Ninth Federal Reserve District had mixed performance in the first quarter of 2015. Hi, my name is Ron Feldman. I'm the Executive Vice President here at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, and today I'm going to talk about banking conditions in the first quarter of 2015 for banks in the Ninth Federal Reserve District. First, let me just remind you what the Ninth District is. It consists of the states of Montana, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and the western portion of Wisconsin. And I'm going to be providing a lot more data on our website relative to what I'm going to be covering today. So the bottom line was that it was a mixed performance in the first quarter of 2015. And what do I mean by mixed? Bank profits were up, loan growth in contrast was flat, and there was a slight uptick in the number of problem assets. So in total, it's not really one direction or the other. It's a little bit up here, flat here, down there. And what I'm going to do in the rest of the presentation today is give you some examples of how banks performed in the district in the various states in each of these three areas. And as a quick reminder, when we're talking about Ninth District banks, we're talking about banks that are headquartered in one of the states in the Ninth District. So let's start with profitability, which was slightly up. And we're going to be looking here at banks in Minnesota. Now, what you're looking at is the median bank. So if you lined up all the banks in the state and you pick the middle bank, this would be showing you the return on average assets for that bank. And you can see that it went up a little bit from the end of last year to the first quarter. You can also see that we're back to the historical norm for, at least in Minnesota, for profitability, and that's true for many of our states as well. And then finally, you can see a green bar in the graph. That shows you the forecast that I made for profitability. I made that last year, and it's for where I think profitability will fall at the end of the year. But the main message is Minnesota, like many of the states, had a slight increase. And in fact, why don't we look now at how all the banks performed? At the left bar chart, you're looking at the actual level of return on average assets for the median bank in all the states. And on the right panel, you're looking at the change. And you can see that for 5 of the 7 areas we're looking at, it was positive. In most cases, it was pretty small. That's measured in basis points, so that's 1/100th of a percentage point. And really, I guess the only thing I'll add is that the Dakotas are where you see the biggest increases. But overall, these were small increases. So that's what we saw in terms of profitability. What about loan growth? Loan growth was really flat, not much change at all. And a representative example of that is this chart on Montana. Here again, you can see we're at the historical norm and really not much movement. So not anything really exciting going on with loan growth. How does that look across the states in our district? Again, looking at a very similar chart to what you saw before. You can see in the right panel, it's showing you the basis point change quarter to quarter. And what's really going to strike you is there are some states where it's moving up just a tiny bit and some states where it's going down just a tiny bit. That's most of the district. We have a couple of outliers, but the main message is not much movement at all in terms of loan growth. Finally, let's look at problem assets. And problem assets are just what it sounds like. These are assets that are not being paid on time or in full. And here we generally saw an increase. Now normally an increase in problem assets for a bank is something to be a little bit concerned on, but the banks in the Ninth District have such low levels of problem assets that a slight uptick is really not much of a problem. And in fact, if you look at the forecast, you can see I was expecting a little bit of an increase from where we're at. Now, the example I'm giving here is South Dakota, where you're looking at the problem loans. Here, as opposed to the other areas where we were at the historical norm, we're actually much below the historical norm. So the historical norm is close to 8% as a measure of problem assets, and here we're just getting back to 4%. What does this look like for all the states in the district? Again, generally up. You can see all the states but western Wisconsin, we're moving up. Not a lot. There's one exception. In terms of Upper Peninsula of Michigan. But otherwise, I think it's a movement up from very low levels. So I think we're actually okay on this front. So in sum, 2015 first quarter is a mixed quarter, some gain in profitability, flat loan growth. I'm expecting that to pick up by the end of the year, and an increase in problem assets, but from very low levels, so I don't think that's a concern. Thank you very much for listening.